Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Ag Forecast for South America, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Now, it's a critical time period for the first crop of soybeans being harvested in Mato Grosso. Further to the south, when you get down here into parts of central and southern Brazil, this is an important part of the year for the maturity of the crop. And then in Argentina, we're about mid-season for a lot of folks. So what I want to do first is I want to play the last week's worth of precipitation. You're going to see a couple of things here. A few systems did roll through parts of Argentina, 2 of them right there at the beginning of the time period, and since then it's been quite dry. We've seen pretty normal monsoonal rains, except for in the east where it's been quite dry, and then right in through here, Paraguay, Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul. Well, let's just go look at it. Over the last few days, some locally very, very heavy rainfall. And you may have seen some of the reports of flooding out of here as some of these storms put down over 100 to, in some places, approaching 200 millimeters of rainfall. Now that's 3 inches to, in some places, up to 6 inches of rain. But in the last few days here, very dry over here in like Minas Gerais, getting into Bahia, this area, but more normal monsoonal rains in the north. But Mato Grosso didn't have a lot as measured by satellite. And like we said, it was a drier time period after the good rains we had earlier in this recent 7-day time period. Now, I'm going to come back to something I talked about on Monday. I noticed this about the pattern from December through mid-January. And it's largely been that our best upper level support has been the rising motion we've seen right here. And again, if I just kind of circle this area, this would be the MJO region of 5 and 6 and bordering on 7 right in here. So really 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we've had a lot of suppression over here for a while. And to give you an update on a map I showed you, or a graphic I showed you earlier in the year, this is for Mato Grosso, and right now we look back over the last 180 days, and still 2020 into 2021 ranks as the driest in the last 40 years, considerably drier than normal. And the normal is way up here. So you can see that on average, now again, this is a 180-day statistic, we have missed out on quite a bit of precipitation. And the monsoon, as it comes in, has been doing so and just not been sustained. And so we have to just ask ourselves, what has this really done to the crop? Because it's starting to come out. Now, we know there were delays with it going in, and some of the rains as of late have been good for this crop. So given the increase in acreage, should we expect a massive pullback in the total size of the crop? I'm going to have to say I don't think so, but the fact is that as of January 15th, so earlier this week, we should have been at about almost 6% harvested in Mato Grosso, and we were under 1%. So you can kind of extrapolate this out, and my best guess moving forward is that we're going to stay closer to the bottom side of this line moving forward and be, probably 20+% behind by the time we get into mid-harvest here in Mato Grosso, which is in another couple of weeks. So we're going to watch this carefully, this situation in Mato Grosso, but the main point I want to make for you is that as we go forward, it's going to be Brazil's southern growing areas that are going to be getting quite a bit of precipitation. Over the next week, quite wet into this area. There's a stalled out boundary in through here, and this is just on the south side of the monsoonal flow. So the monsoonal flow comes around like this. Now, as you look at this map, you may look at Mato Grosso and go, wow, it's dry there again. And yes, this is not advertising a stronger monsoon, but to be just maybe an inch dry over the next week in some places, that still means there could be upwards of 3 inches of rain here, about 100 millimeters of rain, or 80 to 100 millimeters of rain. The drier places I'm concerned about are Brazil's eastern growing areas. And we're going to have to wait until we get past the next couple of days before we start to see better precip coming into Argentina. Now that's through the next week. Let's look at some of the bigger drivers for the week following, because I'll be honest, the European out about 7 days has been a really good performer. Looking beyond that, though, a couple of things to note. This La Nina, right in through here where the ocean waters are still quite cold, we had been seeing some very strong trade winds. But in the latest forecast data, they're really slacking. Now remember, when you want to see where those are, we're going to look for the blues right in through here. And remember, back earlier in my early analysis, I was telling you, wow, those trade winds were just screaming in this area, and there was a lot of blue in this region. Well, it's not there anymore. And you can start to see that the monsoon is weak. The La Nina is weakening, and it's impacting the monsoon. There's westerly winds here, weak easterlies here, westerly winds there, and weak easterlies here. And this is starting to get me thinking that the MJO is going to start to be able to move again. not necessarily in the immediate near term, but it's going to start to be able to move into other phases and start to get away from just this area on the chart. Now, I know as you look over there on the left that the MJO looks as though it's going to come out into phase 6 and 7. But I'm quite confused at that because the best, velocity potential, tell me where the air is going up, is still here though. And that's not quite to phase 6 and 7. Phase 6 and 7 are over in this area here. So given that the forecast through the next 15 days gives us the best, rising motion right in through here, sinking motion happens there, and we're not necessarily suppressing the monsoon at all, nor are we doing anything to kind of stop the forward progression of low pressure systems through Argentina. Now, why I'm addressing this is because as you look out into the week 2 time period, the places that are showing up consistently dry are just this part of eastern Brazil. We see more normal monsoonal rains here in Mato Grosso, very wet in southern Brazil, but honestly, at this time of year, given that we're not harvesting here yet, these rains are going to be beneficial. And as you get into Argentina, the models, they keep kind of bringing in a bit of a drier streak here, but this is not too anomalous from normal. And therefore, I think we're going to be seeing throughout much of South America's growing areas that the very end of January and the start of February looks favorable. Now, one thing we're going to just keep an eye on, I showed you this earlier this week, let's look at it again. This is the forecast for the month of February. And what we see here is very wet in eastern Brazil, possibly an additional 3 to 5 inches of rainfall. We see it wet in Mato Grosso, and the question is this going to slow down harvest? I don't think so. I don't think this is too much rain to slow down their harvest progress. What's slowing the harvest is the fact that the crop was delayed going in and had maturity issues due to some drought conditions. And even as you look down here into Argentina and start to see this drier pocket showing up, with La Nina still present, we would expect it to be dry here. But even at this point, given some recent rains, I can't look at this and see this as being a major red flag as to causing problems. Now, I could be wrong there, and I want to watch the trend in the model here to see if it gets drier. I think you should watch that with me in the next couple of reports I send out. So keep this in the back of your mind as we go forward, and we'll keep this maybe as our benchmark here as we look throughout the month of February. But that's our latest analysis, and again, overall, just stepping back one slide here, it appears that going into the end of January and the beginning of February, most of South America has favorable precipitation patterns going forward. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for your attention. We'll talk to you again soon.